Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. And welcome to all of you who are here in person in New York and to all of you who are following us virtually. It is fantastic to be with you. I'm Raj Kumar. I'm the president and editor-in-chief of Devex. And this week is full of events. I can't count how many I've been to, but I can promise you this is the most exciting event during UN General Assembly Week. And if you don't believe me now, you will in a few minutes. It is that exciting because there's a word I think you're going to feel at this event that you don't typically feel during the policy debates and confrontations between countries that happen in the building down the road. And that word is inspiration, right? At a moment when things seem very challenging in the world, we could all use a little bit of it. You're going to get that today because we're here to celebrate the children, the young people who have won an incredible award. They're the Rise Global winners. If you're not familiar with this prize, it is an award that's given now in the second year by Schmidt Futures and the Rhodes Trust. And it is given to 100 of the most incredible, they use the word brilliant, literally, people in the world who are actually doing something with that talent, doing something to help others. And you're going to hear a lot more about that today. You're going to meet some of these young people. The other reason it's so exciting is these 100 young people who won the award, they just found out this morning, including the ones who are with you right now, who traveled to New York City from all over the world and just found out. And it went out live this morning on television that, hey, they were announced, and now you're getting to hear from them for the first time here. So it is a really exciting moment for all of us who are involved in it. And those of us at Devex have been really looking forward to this moment. We're thrilled to be partnering with Schmidt Futures and the Rhodes Trust to bring you this moment of rise. So congratulations to the winners. You're going to hear that a lot today. Maybe just before we even go any further, if the winners stand up for 1 second so people can see you. And I know you're not going to get the same amount of applause, Eric, but Eric Braverman, who is the CEO of Schmidt. So Eric, I wanted to start out by giving some context to everyone here. I was polling people at this event so far in the hallways and this week at the UN. Not everyone's heard of Rise. And that's one of the things we want to bring to the fore. But before we get into Rise, maybe tell us a little bit about Schmidt Futures. I think I first met you when you were at McKinsey. You were starting their government practice. Then you went to the Clinton Foundation. You were the CEO there. Now you really helped Eric and Wendy Schmidt set up this Schmidt Futures entity and to launch Rise. They made a commitment in 2019, $1 billion commitment. We reported on it at Devex exclusively. We got the scoop. $1 billion toward fellowships, but we didn't really know what that was going to look like. And that has turned into the major part of it has turned into Rise. So take us through the thinking, like why fellowships, why this approach to philanthropy, and why Rise?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's absolutely great to be here today. And it's also great to be a warm-up act for some phenomenal people that we're here to celebrate. Because if you are looking for optimism in a world that can feel very scary, it's right here. It's right here.
It is.
One thing that every global winner will do is come together because we want to build a network and a community. So they'll come together next summer as the class before them did. And before long, hopefully have the opportunity to start meeting with one another, as I understand Rise winners in Africa are already starting to do, by region, by interest area, and so on and so forth. They also will have access to a needs-based college scholarship to help them get that start as they go to university. And the question then is, now what? How do we lower the barrier of entry so that all the things that happen to people that we know, they go to college, but they're also from situations where they needed opportunity to serve. Well, those situations aren't necessarily going away, and they may be different in different cases. People think about, how am I going to feed my family, support my community? They will all have choices about how they want to spend their lives. So what we're looking to do is lower the barrier of entry. And there are a variety of ways in which we look to do that. Number one, provide access to career services such as mentoring and advising on how they spend their lives. Number two is we've set aside some funds that could be used for people to apply to. It's not a handout, it's work that people have to do. This is a program about service. We're choosing people at the beginning of their lives of service. And so the question becomes, if you're ready to start a nonprofit, serve in a nonprofit, create a social enterprise, then you have the ability to apply to funds that we have set aside in order to use those for the benefit of your community. And those are the types of things that we imagine for people throughout their lives. But it's a program designed to meet people where they are. And I hope that we'll see that develop over time.
And you're going to get in a minute a chance to hear directly from some of these Rise Global winners and kind of hear, as I've already done with a few of them, what it means to suddenly try to understand that, wait, I can kind of try anything to help the world and know that I've got some backup. I've got a group behind me. It's pretty amazing. But I want to ask you a little bit more about the philanthropic thinking behind it, because it is unusual. And I mentioned your bio a bit just so people understand that you come at this knowing the philanthropic space, knowing the development space broadly. And you and Eric and Wendy have chosen a path that's quite unique and maybe controversial even in a sense. And many organizations, especially in Silicon Valley, would say, let's fund the things we know work, the things we can measure it next week or tomorrow, right? Those real-time results. And you said, no, we're going to do something that's very long-term. These are 15 to 17-year-olds. You might not see the impact instantly. Take us through that thinking and where you think it fits in the broader philanthropic landscape today.
Well, we are incredibly lucky to work with a family that is willing to make those kinds of long-term bets. And I think that's premised on one very important fundamental belief, which is the money in the world that will change it. It's not in philanthropy. It's in government or business. We should do the math. That's who spends money. But philanthropy can do things that government and business can't. Government finds it very hard to take risk because they're accountable to citizens for why they took risk on some citizens versus others. By the way, as a citizen, I appreciate that. Businesses are responsive to markets. Markets are typically not very forgiving for long-term bets. You either have the results or you don't. You get the money or you don't. When you're in philanthropy, you have an opportunity to break that system and to say, here's a person with an idea, with a vision. If they can prove that idea, government or business will come to scale. We have methods for that. But right now, they're not getting to the fore because they don't look like people who've been supported before. They're not part of a system designed to find them. They may not know the people that are needed, or frankly, maybe their ideas are just too experimental, or the people are too young. So if you start from that premise and you say instead, well, what if we flip it on its head? You make a very different type of bet. I'll give you an example. So just a little bit more than a year ago, Afghanistan changed governments, and it was a very upsetting time for a lot of people. For us in Rise, it was an upsetting time because, our hearts really bled for a lot of people there who were scared and in danger, and in particular for a young man who then became a Rise Global winner named Irfan Ayub. And we and a group of people with the Yalda Hakim Foundation and others worked very hard to then evacuate a large number of people from civil society, journalists, women that had been advocating for the rights of women and girls. And we also helped Irfan and his family to leave Afghanistan. Irfan's project, because this is a program about brilliance in service, was about women and girls and their future in Afghanistan. And one of the reasons he thought he had to flee was because people started knocking on the doors of his family saying, where's the guy doing a survey about women and girls? That may not be in Afghanistan's future. And 360 days later, we're in the only country in the world where women and girls can't go to school. I guess he was right. So we have to remember what's at stake here. This is a person at a very young age who could see what was coming, who imagined a different type of future, who underwent a shock that none of us could imagine. I saw him in Albania 2 or 3 days after we were able to get him out of Kabul. And I met him, and I expected to see somebody that was devastated, that couldn't imagine how they were going to reclaim their lives. And instead, he bounded over. He was happy to be out of Kabul, that's true. But he also said, I am going to spend the rest of my life working on this. Now, he may or he may not, but this is a person who knows the importance of service and that commitment. And so we couldn't be more proud to be part of something that can break the mold by saying, yes, you have a dream, something you imagined early, stay with it, because then the rest of the world can come to support you, but you need that start. And then you need to know that we're not going away.
Yeah, that's incredibly impressive. And the idea that these young people could have a lifetime of service. Just briefly, tell us a little more about Schmidt Futures. You know, Rise is important. It's an important element of what you do. But what's the future of Schmidt Futures? Where are you taking this philanthropic enterprise?
Yeah. You know, fundamentally, what we're doing is we're betting on people for the long term, people who are smarter than we are with ideas to change the world. And we're also, in the short term, doing some really important work on applied problem solving. So if you think of some of the themes of what we're spending our time on, we are focused long term on finding extraordinary people like these throughout their lives. We're betting on scientists in particular who are at a more advanced stage in their career, who are using interdisciplinary methods, because the world will change when we imagine problems in a new way coming across sectors. We are focused also on the interplay between tech talent and public leadership. So those are some examples for the long term. People from a young age throughout their lives, but also people that are working in science and technology at a more advanced stage, but that understand the ways in which by working together across fields, we can have better results. So for example, we have a program called the Schmidt Science Fellows, also in partnership with the Rhodes Trust. There is an incredible Schmidt Science Fellow named Mercy, who created a device for cervical cancer screening by combining the insights she had from 2 different fields. Typically today, a cervical cancer screening device costs about $20,000 of a certain kind. And the one that she created costs $100. So if you're trying to lower the cervical cancer rates for women in places that are, you know, low to middle income, $100 is a lot better than $20,000 in trying to get screening devices out there. And so this is a person who is also at a younger stage of their career, a postdoc, but somebody that is using the tools of modern life to solve problems. So that's one very important thing, is people throughout their lives using modern tools and technology, and then applying them in certain areas, particularly around, you know, the positive uses of technology in society. We launched a large effort about how to make sure that AI is working for people in 2050 and not against it. How do we use the tools of the bioeconomy? Biology will change the world. Right now, a lot of things we make, we could grow. Well, what are we going to do if we use biology more effectively? Well, you could create jobs, lots of them. You could feed more people. You could reduce the effects of climate change. Well, we're at a very early stage of that. How are we going to do that in a more sophisticated way? So we're focused on positive use of technology in society, advancing frontiers of science, and we're looking to experiment further, because that's the advantage of private philanthropy.
Very exciting. We have to move to our next segment here, but just in a couple of sentences, what does this day feel like for you?
I mean, it is the most exciting day, because what we're in it for is people changing the world, and here they are. And I can't wait for you to be able to introduce them to people here in this room, those watching, and those that'll watch after.
Yeah, me neither.
We'll hear more from them than their lives.
Thank you so much. Eric
Thanks,
Braverman,
Raj.
everyone. Thank you so much, Eric. Before we get to the kids, and we will get there, we thought it would be important to bring a perspective that unites, I think, the week we're having here at the UN General Assembly and this moment that Rise is having, announcing these global winners. And we couldn't think of anyone better, and we're delighted and honored to have Elizabeth Cousins with us. Elizabeth Cousins, yeah, please give her a round of applause. About my friend Elizabeth, who has had many roles. Currently, She's the president and CEO of the UN Foundation, and everybody knows her for that. But she's had a long career at the UN, including as U.S. ambassador to the UN Economic and Social Council, where she helped lead the U.S. negotiations on the SDGs, on these pins you see everyone wearing and celebrating on the global goals. But even more than that, she was also a Rhodes Scholar herself, and so has a personal connection to the Rhodes Trust and to the idea of lifting up young people and giving them an opportunity in life. Congratulations on everything you've done, and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Raj. And I think I have the toughest job because I'm standing between you all and listening to the award winners. So I'm going to be really, really short. But so thank you to you and to Devex. Eric, great to see you, and to Schmidt Futures and the Rhodes Trust. This is such a phenomenal initiative. And I'm just honored to be joining you to celebrate the second generation of, as you said, brilliant awardees who I had the pleasure to meet a number of you earlier today. So I'll just make a few remarks that maybe do connect a little bit some of the preoccupations of what a lot of the conversations have been around town this week. You know, this is a very young century, and already our world has been pretty pummeled, right? We've been pummeled by a series of really epic crises and emergencies, and you all know what they are, and they're hitting communities and countries around the world, and they're hitting the most vulnerable. And global cooperation, the thing we most need to solve for that, and the thing we most need to be able to propel ourselves to a better future, is under greater duress than ever before. And whether it's the Sustainable Development Goals or a whole set of other challenges that we're trying to solve. Now, that's why, in our view at the UN Foundation, I'm so excited to be here, it is more important than ever to be able to tap young thinkers, young activists, and young talent to try to apply themselves to those challenges. I know you all know this, but half the world's population today is under 30. You know, it's a young world and it's getting younger. And so the energy and ideas of young people are so critical to the future that we need, and to re-energizing the kind of global cooperation that people struggle sometimes across the road to try to do, but we need so urgently. Some of you may have heard that the UN Secretary General last year made a very strong statement that he wanted to do everything he could to empower young people to be what he called designers of their own future. So he launched a whole series of initiatives. We're involved in some of them, but really to put young people at the forefront of decision-making, of implementation, and of really shaping the agenda for what we need to do in all sectors and in all geographies to put ourselves on track for a better and fairer world. We're also seeing increasing attention, which is really exciting to me, to the whole question of future generations. You know, there are 11 billion people who are yet to be born in this young century. Most of them will be born in Africa and Asia. You know, in 50 years from now, you are 50 times more likely to be born in Togo than in Switzerland. So everything we do, whether it's policy work, our economics, our innovations, our institutions, should all be getting reimagined for that future, not the past. So that's among one of the other reasons that I'm really excited to be here. We have the privilege at the UN Foundation of working with a group of youth-led youth networks around the world. Together, they represent about 800 million young people. It's something called the Unlock the Future Coalition. I'd be thrilled to tell you about it if you're interested. It's one of the best parts of my job, I'm just going to say, and I think this is probably one of the best parts of my week. But just to say, there are so many ways that I'm excited, and the world is excited to see what you're going to do. I mean, you at Schmidt Futures have given these young, brilliant minds a gift, but what most you've done is given a gift to all of us, because you are the ones who are going to help us get out of the pickle we're in. You're going to help us make a better future, and anything that we can do, certainly at the UN Foundation, to support you, consider us friends, allies, partners, and just big fans. So I'm going to get out of the way because you're the center of attention, and you should be, and just really thrilled to be here with you all. Raj, back to you.
Elizabeth, that was fantastic. And here we go. Everybody ready to meet these global winners? I want to ask 3 of the global winners to join me on stage. We're going to have a conversation. And I'm also going to mention who the other ones are in the room. But first, for those joining on stage, please come up when I say your name. Tony Wang. Olaolu Olubayanle. Now we have a number of other global winners with us today. We've got, and when I say your name, stand up if you're here. TJ Hatch. No? James Wynn. No? Okay, let me make sure. Maybe my list is a little longer than everyone who's in this room. Let me go back to this version and see if I have the right ones. Okay, I've met several of you, so I know some of you are here. Reina Kawasaki. Rishi Ambavenica. Hannah Bailey Cherry. And let me see if I've missed somebody else here. Maybe Javier? Are you here? No. Antonio, you're here. Okay, Antonio Javier. Congratulations to all of you. And Elizabeth, I think you're going to join what I understand. Yeah? Come on up. Okay. We've got a mic and a few more coming up for our guests. Here you go. So I just want to say a few words about who the global winners are up on stage with me. And then we'll have a little bit of a conversation and you'll get to hear from them directly. So Maniza, you're 16?
Yes, I'm 16.
And you're from Calcutta?
Yes,
in
Calcutta, India.
And you, there was a cyclone in Calcutta not long ago, was it? How long ago was this?
Yeah, last year.
Last year, right?
Mhm.
And it wiped out a lot of educational institutions. A lot of kids weren't able to go to school.
That's correct.
What did you and your sister end up doing?
So there was a cyclone called Cyclone Yas last year, and it basically wiped out all the educational institutions. So me and my sister started an initiative called the Gyan and Ralo Initiative, which translates to knowledge light in my mother tongue Bengali. And we hosted STEM workshops for the children who were displaced. We hosted, STEM classes and taught science, maths, and English to all of them. But I really believe in solving problems at a deeper level, not at the surface level. And what we saw at the schools was that there were many visually impaired children as well. So me and my sister then decided to create STEM audiobooks of the Indian curriculum called NCRT, and then basically distribute it amongst them. So we actually translated the entire middle school NCRT curriculum, and yeah, it's just been a journey.
And just give people a sense of how many students you supported with this work. How many?
Over 2,000.
Over 2,000 students were taught by it. I want to turn over to you. Aulaolu, you are a computer scientist,
computer engineer,
studying to be one at Clarkson University in New York State. You've designed a device that converts toxic gases into electricity. And your idea is to make these kinds of inventions to support low and middle income countries, people who have less resources but need opportunity. And I understand for your RISE project, you also developed a vacuum cleaner using a line pulling robot. Is that right?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your work in robotics and AI, what you're studying at Clarkson, and your background.
Right. So I'm from Nigeria. I'm specifically from Ogun State, but I've lived in Lagos my entire life. And I would say that my time growing up in Nigeria has really pushed me to want to create solutions to the problems that I see. I'm very much interested in STEM, specifically technology. So like creating applications, so making like robots, for example. One of the things I started when I was in my final year of high school was that I surveyed my community and I figured out, okay, what are the problems that majority of the people have and how can we use technology to kind of automate those tasks so they don't have those issues anymore? And it turned out to be that most people didn't like cleaning. So I decided, how best can I help this community using my passion and interest for technology? And it turned out that I could easily make a line following robot, which is just a little car that is able to move around any place on the floor, given you give it a path using a line. And then attached to that is a little dustpan at the back, and it basically just cleans up the dirt as it moves around the room. So from there, now I'm in college and I'm working with a few people at school to figure out how it is that we're still working on the toxic gas project, and we're trying to see how best can we use all these different skills and ideas that we have to eventually apply it back to the different places that we came from.
Thank you. Tony, just turning to you now. You live in the United States. You live in California, right?
Yep,
In
that's
the
correct.
Bay Area. And your focus has been on artificial intelligence, and in particular, the bias, the racial and ethnic bias that can exist when using AI. And you want to address that because you see potential inequities in the healthcare system coming from that bias in AI. Tell us a little bit more about how you got onto that issue and what you've been doing about it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is obviously home to a lot of really big tech companies. There's a lot of access to education for computer science and technology. And so growing up, I became really interested in just using computers and devices to solve different problems. And then one problem that's been really fascinating me recently is the problem of AI bias, which is basically when like engineers or computer scientists create these AI algorithms, a lot of the times they can unintentionally build like human discrimination and biases into the system without even knowing. One common example is like if you're building a device that can detect a skin disease, your training data might only come from a certain racial group. And so it might not work as well on other groups. And so when we're developing AI systems, it's really important that our AI it takes into account the diversity of the world. And so for my project specifically, I wanted to address the problem of a lack of healthcare accessibility for a lot of people. So for people who don't have health insurance, a lot of medicines are too expensive and they can't afford it. And a major reason for that is pharmaceutical monopolization, where a few really big pharmaceutical companies control all of drug development, and then they can kind of control the price however they want, and they have a lot of control over that. And so for my project, I developed an AI algorithm that can automatically generate potential drugs that could treat different diseases, so that ideally smaller startups and other less monopolized organizations can test out these drugs and even out the playing field a little bit so that the drugs can be cheaper and more effective. And when I was doing this, I was able to try to prevent AI bias by making sure that I got data from a wide variety of different sources, just making sure that it took into account the diversity of the world.
And just remind everyone, Tony, how old you are?
I'm 17 years old.
Anisa, let's just start with you. Now that we've heard a little bit about who all three of you are, I'd love to just hear, how today feels. So you just found out hours ago that you are a Rise Global winner. How do you feel about it?
I have no words. It's been exciting, probably even tiring, but I'm just so excited to join this amazing community. I mean, it's such a dream come true, like completely, yeah.
Yeah, Tony, how do you feel?
Yeah, same as Melissa. I'm like still in shock right now. Like I feel like at any moment I'm just gonna wake up and this will be a dream. Like just the mentorship, the networks that Rise provides are absolutely life-changing. And I think just having access to this global community for life, lifetime benefits will just be so beneficial in the future for like all our aspirations.
And Olaolu, I know you were a winner from last year. It's now been a year. How has it been for you? How do you feel being a Rise Global winner a year in?
I'm extremely honored, and I feel very, very confident of the potency of the program, because we were just in Cape Town and we met a lot of, like, all the global winners met in Cape Town. And one of the things that we started, as Mr. Braverman mentioned, was the African Union at Rise. And one of the things that we started doing was to make sure that all the students who are part of Rise, who also come from African countries, we formed a little coalition to ensure that between ourselves, we identify the issues across the African continent and try to support each other as we try to work towards solving those problems. So really, for me, the first and most important thing that I have been able to see is the networks that we're building and will continue to build with my new cohort members.
Elizabeth, I'm going to ask them one more round of questions, but then I want you to feel free to jump in if you want to ask them something too. I guess I'm curious to know what you plan to do. I mean, we've heard a bit about what you've done, but what do you plan to do now that you have this backing, this support? Vanessa, maybe we can start with you. As you look ahead into your future, I know you're just 16, but you're looking ahead. What do you think you might do now that you're a Rise Global winner?
Personally, I feel extremely motivated and more dedicated, I guess, towards my aspirations now joining this global community. I think seeing the diversity and representation really makes me feel hopeful for the future as well, because at times you do need to, have that support and see yourself represented as well. I've always looked up to the past year's winners, and then it's such a dream come true to be among them. But really, I'm passionate about, now we're talking about the UN SDGs, so about UN SDG for quality education and UN SDG 17 partnership between goals. I believe education is a very powerful tool to drive innovation, policy change. And personally, I see myself advocating for that in the future. Really, through this networking opportunity, mentorship opportunity, I want to expand the outreach of my organization, really reach more remote areas in India, also collaborate with my like-minded peers in the Rise Global community, and also share the stories in my community. I think one thing that's really important for me is to honor my roots. I really believe that in life, whatever success you achieve, you must remember the community which supported you throughout. Remember the values that you treasured along the way, and really, uplift the community that got you there. So I want to honor that in the future. Yeah.
Fantastic. It just so happens, Vanessa, that you're on a panel with the president of the UN Foundation. So I think if you want to support the SDGs, you now know who to call. Tony, what about you? What do you plan to do in the future?
Yeah, so in the future, I definitely want to first just talk to the other global winners from around the world. I think STEM is something that's very collaborative. So I want to hear about what initiatives the other winners are working on and how we can work together, maybe share our projects, share our technologies. And something else that I'm really interested in is just increasing access to STEM education. I think the reason why I was able to work on this project was because from a really early age, I was surrounded by such a great community that gave me so many resources. And that's something I really want to work on in the future, because like I have cousins in China, and they have like a much worse education system than here in the States. And they don't get to learn as much as me, which isn't fair at all, because I'd say they're much smarter than me. And so I really want to work on providing these opportunities for people in areas that aren't as developed. I think one of the best ways to solve the issues of tomorrow, like the SDGs, is to provide people with the tools to solve these problems. So like by providing early exposure to important fields so that they can come up with the solutions in the future. So maybe giving like CS education to young kids who usually wouldn't be exposed to it at all, giving them access to that early on so that when they grow up, they can think of more solutions and then help solve the problems of the world.
Really exciting. Alaolu, tell everybody what you're planning for the future. I know you're studying computer engineering at Clarkson, but where do you think that's going to take you?
Yes, I'm very much interested in seeing how technology can be used to improve the methods and standards of living of people across African countries. And I really think that me studying right now is going to help me get my feet wet in that industry. And from there, for example, I just recently read that Samantha Powers, she recently announced that about the African Localization Initiative. And just monitoring that space, that the US is making strategic plans to support local businesses across Africa, I really plan to keep up with that news and make sure that by the time I'm ready to leave college, by the time I'm ready to start my own work in this social space, I'm ready to go back home. I'm ready to go back across the African continent and actually use the different resources around me to add to the development.
Well, I think you'll see a lot of nodding heads in this room for that theme. Elizabeth, is there anything you want to ask these young people?
First of all, I kind of want to set up a shingle over there that says, if you're interested in the SDGs, please come talk to me, because we need all of you, and it's incredibly exciting. And I was just struck by your last comment. There does feel like there is, maybe there's a really wonderful karmic alignment right now between the urgency of the moment the opportunity that a lot of people in different institutions are trying, like Samantha, for example, trying to create to change the way those institutions operate, and people like you. And if the right kind of constellation of networks and relationships and things can come together over time, and I think that's really what your long hold investment is all about in these wonderful young people. It's really exciting to think about what kind of path we could all be on as a world. So I was just going to ask you, it's maybe another version of Raj, your question, but just if you fast forward to 10 years from now, where you think we'll be as a world and where you'll be, in whatever order.
Yeah, Manisa, why don't you start?
Okay. Okay. So it's been my childhood dream to become an emergency physician for UNICEF. So it's completely awesome to actually meet you. But most importantly, I want to be in the social space. So the reason why I want to, work for the UN Foundation in specific is that it's important for me to work with community-based organizations to actually serve underserved communities around the globe. I think coming from the global South, I've seen the disparities, be it education, access to technology. And for me, I've seen these disparities, so I want to change it. So really in the future, I want to work through grassroots initiatives. It's important to, have hands-on experience into solving these global issues. And yeah, that's where I see myself.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so in the similar vein as Manisa, I'm also like hoping that 10 years from now, I can work somewhere in just anywhere that creates social impact, whether that be in STEM or even in like public policy or writing. I think in the future, there are definitely going to be problems that we've solved over the next 10 years. I'm sure we're making a lot of great progress. So some problems will be solved, but there will also definitely be new problems. Like that's just the nature of the world. There's always going to be new problems. So I really hope that 10 years from now, I hope there aren't a lot of new problems, but if there are, I hope that we're working early, like we're trying to solve these problems before they spiral out of control, like a lot of problems have become today. I hope that as these new problems may arise in the future, we learn from our mistakes of like letting it drag on too long because of whether it be financial incentives or even just like complacency, and trying to identify these problems early and address them early as well.
And I would actually like to go back to the point you made earlier about how in the future, Africa's population is going to rise, and it's especially going to be young people. I believe it was Wednesday, the president of my country, Muhammadu Buhari, he actually made a point about how he doesn't want Nigeria to be left behind as time is moving on. And one of the things I'm seeing the future is going to get into is to make sure that I don't want to see Nigeria, I don't want to see African countries left behind as our population, our youth population increases. So I want to be part of the people who are making sure that the youth are delivering solutions to the continent's challenges.
I would love to give people who are here a chance to ask a question of these global winners. We have a microphone, and we'd love to see if anyone has a question or a thought or anything they'd like to share at all. There's one in the back there.
Hi there. It's nice to see you all. And I'm wondering, you've talked a lot about the opportunities. What feels to you like might be the biggest obstacle for you?
And I forgot to say, introduce yourself, but of course we all know Lois Quam,
Okay.
who is the president and CEO of Pathfinder
Yes.
International.
Thank you. And a Rhodes Scholar like Elizabeth. And that was a great door that opened for me. And I'm excited to see how this award opens things for you.
Anisa?
Could you repeat your question once, please?
What do you see as the biggest obstacles to your dreams or your hopes for the future?
Personally, for me, it would be imposter syndrome. If you don't know what that is, it's basically doubting yourself, doubting your capabilities, your potential. I think really, again, there's a problem of ageism. I'm personally, through my Rise project, working with people who are of my age, and it's sometimes doubtful, you're doubting your capabilities, like, you're just their age. Are you doing the right thing? And at this point, I just want to share a personal anecdote. So at one of our STEM workshops, there was a young Muslim girl who actually conducted her first workshop. She was of my age. So she did her first science experiment on spot, and she said, I quote unquote, "I feel like a scientist." And that comment really impacted me because I personally, at my school, have access to research labs. I have access to research mentors. I'm working on research projects, and I think I have gained a lot of experience in research. And to see this girl who just had her first experiment, just seeing her joy though, it really made me feel more motivated. Like, okay, no problem. I mean, if no problem, like if this is your first experiment, there's going to be many more to come, and you're definitely going to pursue your passion in STEM. So yeah, the problem of imposter syndrome, of ageism, that's the biggest obstacle, but that's also my biggest motivation.
Yeah. Tony, what about you? What's your biggest barrier to achieving your dreams?
Yeah, so I think a really big barrier for me, and I think for a lot of people as well, is just a lack of like personal responsibility, feeling like the problems relate to them. I think a lot of the times we see these big global issues and we don't see how it applies to us personally. So we think like, oh, these like politicians will take care of it, or like these like UN officials will take care of it. But in reality, the majority of the work has to be done by the citizens of each country, the people around the world. And like even me personally, like a lot of the times when I recycle, I'm like, why am I even doing like this? This isn't going to change anything. But like, I feel like if we keep that sense of responsibility for the world that we're all sharing, if everyone takes responsibility for their own actions and thinks about future generations that their children are going to inherit, and just feel that they have a role to play, even though it may be infinitesimally small. If they don't play that role, that's one less person contributing to the cause. So if everyone can just step up, live up to their responsibilities and do what they need to do to create a better world, I think that'll create a brighter future. So I think that's a really big obstacle that we really need to work on, just having that sense of responsibility.
It's an insight that takes some people many decades before they get to it. Alao, what's your barrier to achieving your dreams?
I think for me, it's likely to be the patience to see through the idea I'm working on. Because if I start working on something, on this particular problem, I see another problem comes up, I'm likely to want to try to pivot, to move and try to solve that issue. But it's important to stay steady, stay on the path that I've already started with the problem I'm trying to fix. And yeah, I think for me, it's just going to be patience and just the willingness to stick with the project I've started.
Okay. Yeah. Congratulations on that. Do we have any other? Here we go.
Afternoon, CD Glenn with PepsiCo Foundation. So we often hear talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. You are all beyond talented. The word is brilliant, right? You're brilliant. And you've gotten this tremendous opportunity, but I'm interested in your peer groups. You as 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds, are your peer groups equally as motivated? Are you a catalyst within your peer groups to bring others along? I'm interested in you as a 16, 17, 18-year-old student. And also, what do you feel like to get here, to be on this stage? What do you feel like you've had to sacrifice at that teenage years to really live your dreams and be so driven? What do you feel like service? Has there been sacrifice in your service as a young person?
It's a great question. And I think, since we have limited time and we had a few hands up, we'll take a few more questions at once. If you can bring a mic over here. If you can bring a mic over there. Yeah, thank you. And then there was another hand. Yeah, we'll take a couple more. Okay. Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Lauren Tilstra, Chief of Staff and Head of Exec Comms at Verizon. I'm glad to hear PepsiCo talk because it kind of dovetails with my question. So I wondered, there's some skepticism with the next generation around what the private sector is doing. So I wondered, what's your interpretation of that, and how would you like to see the private sector work to help change some of these big challenges that we're facing? Thanks.
Thank you. And then there's one here in the front. Oh yeah, we'll take that one too. Go ahead.
I'm Mark Blumenthal. I'm Executive Director of the Social Ventures Foundation. And no question, you guys have outstanding gray matter, and I applaud you for your work and what you're about to do. My question is, how can you apply that gray matter to the UN SDG #1, which is no poverty, given that a huge percentage of the population on this planet is in extreme poverty, and the income divides of the planet continue to grow, and it's imperative that we take gray matter and apply it to helping to develop products and services that can create jobs to deliver affordable social impact at the bottom of the pyramid. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and one last one here in the front.
Yeah. Hi guys.
Oh, we got another one back there. Okay.
Oh, oops, my bad. So my name is Saqib. I am originally actually from Bangladesh. I work as a VC investor here in the city now. So speak Bengali as well from the other side of the border, Eastern India and Bangladesh. So I came to America in 2015. So I actually have a very similar story to you guys. So I was, I had a couple of projects, etc. So my question is around continuity. So I had all these brilliant projects. I worked on them, eventually came to America, and they were like, oops, you kind of have to go work at JP Morgan or Google to get your visa sponsored, or else your future is in jeopardy. So I think it'd be interesting to hear what you guys' continuity plans are, how you're thinking about, okay, how do you keep your project going as you enter college? And it would also be interesting to hear from the Rise organizers or the group here on how you plan to support them scale their projects, right? So there are a lot of these projects that they have 1,000 people, 2,000 people. How do they take it to 20,000 people, 200,000 people? So I'd be very curious to hear that, and all the best to you guys, and thank you to the organizers.
Thank you. And one last one, because I promised here in the front. Are you sure? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. We're not going to answer all of these questions, all of you. Okay. We'll pick and choose. But maybe we can start with one from our colleague here, C.D. Glynn from PepsiCo Foundation, about sacrifice. Does anybody feel they had to make a sacrifice to get to this point, to do something? Go ahead, Manisa.
Yeah. I think one sacrifice, I'd not say to sacrifice, but probably, I guess I had to mature more quickly, because, seeing the problems around, really, it takes a great deal of courage. You see so many problems like wars, or, you get to be aware of all these global issues. It's very disheartening. You lose a lot of hope, but it takes a great deal of maturity, a sense of motivation and dedication, to really use the issues that you see around you as a bouncing platform to propel yourself towards, your dreams. Yeah, a great deal of, even though I'm not complaining that I have to mature more quickly. I mean, I'm not complaining. It's great. But I see it as a gift though. So I'm grateful.
And Manisa, what about your friends, your peer group? Do you feel like they're in a similar situation to you? Are they equally motivated to tackle these problems?
Okay, I think they have the motivation and the talent, but I don't feel like they have the resources and the opportunities to pursue them. Because really, when you talk about the political system as well as the educational system, it's not very encouraging at times, and it really demotivates them. But why do we need these systems? We have each other, so we can motivate each other, and that's how we overcome it.
Tony, maybe we can shift gears to another question, just in the interest of time. Lauren from Verizon asked about the private sector, and you mentioned pharmaceutical companies in your earlier comments. I wonder if you have a take on the opportunity to work with the private sector, or your perspective in general. She mentioned how some young people are skeptical about the private sector now. Are you, or are your peers?
Yeah, so I think what's really interesting about the private sector is that it's so broad. There are so many different areas. You can talk about cybersecurity. How do we keep our data secure? But there's also patient data. There's so much data out there. There's drug assays, there's 23andMe tests, blood tests. There's so much out there. And then there's also social media privacy of how much do we share on social media? And I think a common trend I'm seeing in Gen Zs, we're becoming a little bit more private, weirdly, with more social media. And I think a lot of Gen Zs becoming sick of the social media. We have these apps, and most of my friends, delete the apps like multiple times a month. Like anytime there's a test coming up, like we should all delete it. Or like we need a mental health break, we all delete it. Which is like weird because like you'd expect like us to be like using it a lot. But I think we've gone past the point of like, oh, social media is like the hot new thing. Now we're like, okay, we're sick of it. And then like there's like new social medias like Be Reels and stuff where it's like live photos, but like people don't like sharing a lot of stuff, which is why I think in the privacy sector, what Gen Z is really looking for is just assurance that they don't have to share information that they don't want to share. Like a lot of times, big companies like Facebook will like store data that were on their terms and conditions, but no one reads those. So like they take it anyway. So I think just having greater awareness of what exactly privacy entails, what our data is being used for, as long as we're more aware of that, I think that'll solve a lot of the problems in this sector.
Really interesting. Thank you for that commentary. Thank you. Laolu, I'm going to go to you for maybe both of the last questions if I can, because I think they're connected to what you are working on and where you are at this stage in university. So one question was, you know, you're probably going to have a lot of job offers, let's be honest, including maybe from some people in this room. What are you going to do to make sure you stick to your plan? You talked about that discipline, and our colleague here originally from Bangladesh mentioned, you know, continuity. What's your thinking right now? I think you're in your second year at university, so you've got a little ways to go. But do you think that you might end up in a job at a big international company or multinational company, or do you think you'll do something in a social enterprise or a nonprofit? What are you thinking at this point?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest challenges I'm facing is like making sure that I have the dedication to stick to what project I'm working on. And I think that is something I'm still working through. As for what I think I would be doing, say, after college, I definitely know I want to gain hands-on experience working with another company, just so that by the time I return home, I'm not just doing things fresh off the bat. Like I have that wealth of knowledge I can pour into others. I heard it somewhere that you want to pour into a place out of full cups. So I want to make sure I'm as full as I can be, so that when I go back, I'm actually I'm giving answers to questions that are being asked today.
And Mark Blumenthal asked the question about the reality in the world, about this is a very unequal world. And there is extreme poverty, you know, people living on less than $2 a day. When you think of that reality, you talked a little bit about your commitment to trying to work on those issues. But do you think that in the end, the scale of the problem is just so big that it's really bigger than the three of you and then the other Rise winners, the 100 of them? Or do you think you could use the gray matter, as he put it, and actually make a dent in some of these challenges like inequality and poverty?
I don't think anything is too big. And the reason I say so is because I have a very succinct definition of excellence. And to me, excellence is doing for one person what you wish you could do for everyone. And if everybody was doing that, our world would be excellent.
I know it feels like we've been applauding a lot, but I think for really good reason. These are very inspirational comments. Elizabeth, do you have any final thoughts that you want to share, or any final question that you might have for the group? Or?
Honestly, just get going. Just get going. Keep doing what you're doing. And all of you others who we didn't get to hear from as much in the room, and the rest of your cohort and last year's, is just such an exciting opportunity to get to learn from you and see what you're planning to do. I love your philosophy of excellence, and which is a great code to live by, I think, for all of us. So just, yeah, get on with it. And congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I think get on with it is a great tagline to end this session with. And I hope you'll all join me in first thanking Rise, thanking Schmidt Futures and the Rhodes Trust, and especially thanking and congratulating these incredible winners. There's a reception now. I hope you get a chance to talk to some of the global winners, and I look forward to continuing the discussion. Thank you.
Yeah.